What I would like to start off with is just look at the prize issue, because it's raised a lot of eyebrows, Mr. Naidoo here. What happened was you had Salim Ahmed Salim, who obviously had the unenviable task of telling the world that in Africa, there are no winners of this award. And the interpretation was simply that there are no leaders good enough for this award today in Africa, and that perhaps leadership is going down in our continent.
Well, let's look at it in its broader context. The award has been offered over the last 6 years, and 3 leaders have got the award. It's former President Chisano from Mozambique, it's former President Festus Mogae, who was from Botswana, and then President Pires last year. So in 6 years, it's been awarded 3 times. Now, if you had to make a comparable prize, say, for European leaders, or for leaders of the Americas, or leaders of Asia, I doubt you would have awarded it in 3 times in 6 years. Now, the award is not just for governance, for governing your country and then stepping down voluntarily. It is for extraordinary and exceptional leadership in which you've promoted to social cohesion, you've served with humility and integrity, you've responded to the issues and created opportunities, economic opportunities, you have supported human rights, a human rights approach to your governance. So it's a very complex set of factors that determines, and it's done by an independent committee, not by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation board. So we're not part of the decision making. Secondly, if one looks at in 54 countries, there are only about 2 or 3 leaders that step down voluntarily and therefore form the pool from which you choose. It's not that there's a failure of leadership across the board. And so there are a number of very outstanding leaders. They haven't stepped down because the award is for the executive head of government that steps down.
Does that mean that then we have a problem with people who are not stepping down, people who are holding on to positions?
Of course we have a problem with
dictatorship in our continent?
Of course we have a problem. But those people, will never qualify. And one of the reasons why we put the award forward is to incentivize good behavior, the respect for governance. So that award will never be offered for people who refuse to step down, even if they change dramatically in the last year of office.
But, people have always, and I'm going to bring you in, Ambassador Khumalo, in a minute. Some people have already been saying perhaps 1, the criteria is too strict. 2, the idea of leadership as envisaged by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, perhaps also there's a problem with it, because why not award it to an opposition leader?
Well, this is a very good question, because the Mo Ibrahim Foundation does not claim to deal with leadership across the board. We say we have a very specific remit. We want to create an award for the executive head of government that has done an exceptional job and is now stepping down. Now, if there are other foundations, and there are many foundations in the world that want to create a prize for the best finance minister, or the best leader of opposition, or the best civil society leader, it is up to them. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation board has decided as one tool, just one small part of the work we do, that we want to try and create an award for exceptional performance of an executive head of government.
Because the Mo Ibrahim Foundation has, and some people are reading from the award given to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, that it has thought about civil society leaders.
Yes, but that's not the prize committee.
Yeah.
So there's a distinction between the prize committee that is headed by a very reputable people like Salim Salim, who was in the OAU Secretary General, by people like Mati Atisari, Mohammed Baradai, who are on the prize committee. It's a separate structure. The board, in its own wisdom, can decide to award extraordinary awards, like we did in the case of Nelson Mandela, even though he did not qualify, because it was long after that he had stepped down. Or in the case of Archbishop Tutu, we will reward outstanding individuals who have contributed to the deepening of governance and speaking truth to power. So that was the context in which in September we said, given the long service that Archbishop Tutu has spoken on the issue of democracy and human rights, we feel it is appropriate to give him an award.
Ambassador Khumalo, let me bring you in. Some people are even arguing that perhaps the Mo Ibrahim Foundation should consider awarding countries that are making headway in terms of human rights, in terms of development and so on, as opposed to leaders.
I think the concept of the Mo Ibrahim Prize is fine as it is. The one wrinkle I want to bring in, which is slightly different but still speaks to your point, is that our experience in the Thabo Mbeki Foundation has been that there is also room to groom the middle-level leadership, the young thought leaders. Because, the government, the president at the top may be very good, but Jay and I, having served in government, know that the president may look good because of the work of these faceless individuals who are below, who do all the work. We've chosen to focus on these mid-level leaders. I'm not saying that's where the Mo Ibrahim Foundation should go, but I wish there was a way in which those in the mid-level could also be acknowledged, because, leadership is a collective process. It takes everybody to make a leader. That's why we say you need a leader with integrity, with compassion, and with understanding, because one of the great attributes of a leader is to be able to run this machinery that makes you a great leader. So we've discovered that in working with the young leadership and what have you, the young people who make the leader look great is another thing to focus on.
But Ambassador Khumalo, do you accept as well as the Thabo Mbeki Foundation that in the past 3 years there hasn't been a leader capable of taking this award, a leader who would have left office in the past 3 years, who would have not exceeded their constitutionally defined limit and so on?
No, but I don't think it's our role to judge this eminent persons group that has made those decisions. They have made a decision looking at what requirements they need and all of that. And, so for me to say, why did you find 3? You could have found 6, you could have found 9. The Mo Ibrahim Leadership Prize plays a very important role in that it holds out this vision for us that if there are great leaders who at the end of their service have done a lot, we hold them up. But I'm saying that we shouldn't just look at one spot. I'm saying it takes others. It takes a village, to make the child grow. So maybe we should think about the village. Are there places where we could make the village operate very well, the government operate very well? And that's where we should look. Maybe not the Mo Ibrahim Foundation itself, but others to do that. Because in Africa, if we don't collectively do things, we'll focus at the top, and the rest of the system will fall apart.
I would agree with what Dumisani has said. And the prize is just one small part of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Yeah. We have scores of young people that are today being mentored. For example, we have taken some of the brightest brains of young graduates in the continent, and we've attached them to the president of the African Development Bank, to the WTO Secretary General, to the Pascal Lamy who runs the. So we are encouraging young people to develop what I absolutely agree with Dumasani on, the next generation of leaders. This is fundamental, because if you look at the average age of a head of state in Africa, it hovers around 70. If you look at the demographics of the billion people who live in Africa today, 50% are under 20 years of age. By 2050, that will be 75%. So we've got to start creating the new generational leadership and that intergenerational debate. Now, the Mo Ibrahim Foundation's one of our big things is convening this major conference of leaders, which will take place in Senegal in Dakar in November. And the focus of this year's annual Mo Ibrahim Foundation meeting is youth leadership. We are having 500 youth leaders that will be meeting with the senior leadership of the African Union, of the UN Economic Commission in Africa, of the generation of heads of state that are currently there. And we're going to have this debate precisely about the issues that Dumasani is raising. How are we preparing both economic opportunities but leadership opportunities for the next generation?
Just again, to use Ambassador Khumalo's analogy of a village, In terms of the 2012 Ibrahim Index of African Governance, and how is the village looking?
Well, the village over the last 10 years, and remember, data is a huge challenge in Africa, but we've collected data over the last 10 years, and it does show an improvement across 75% of the indicators around governance, which relate to economic opportunities, to gender, to education, to health, to the question of human rights. And that's tremendously important, but it's coming off a very low base.
Yeah.
So what we know is that some countries are doing exceptionally well. So if you take countries like Mauritius, or you take countries like Tanzania, or like Botswana, they are continuously performing above average and setting the standard. But you take countries like you mentioned, the economic powerhouses, we've seen a decline.
In South Africa. And I would like us to talk about that.
Yeah.
I would like us to be specifically talking a little bit about South Africa and where it is. One of the things is, and you mentioned it, sustainable economic opportunity. South Africa and Kenya in particular have registered declines in this area. Firstly, talk to me about what this sustainable economic opportunity is and how has South Africa and Kenya declined in this regard?
Well, governance at the end of the day, Xolani, has to be about, are we giving our people a better life? Are people having basic services, access to water, electricity, sanitation, roads? Are they getting not just access to education, but what is the quality of education, the quality of health? So ultimately, governance is about democracy, and democracy is more than just the right to vote every 5 years. If you look at the history of South Africa, we made tremendous advances in deracializing our society. No one wants to go back there. But if you look at economic opportunities, we have done exceedingly poorly. Because if you currently look at the situation of inequality, we have become number one in the world on the Gini coefficient, which measures inequality. How can we have inequality growing in a democracy? Secondly, if you look at the statistics on employment, we know today, from government statistics, more than half of young people coming out of 12 years of education have very few skills, no jobs, and unlikely to have a job in their lifetime. That is a time bomb. If you start to look at the situation of how many dependents a breadwinner supports. In my time as General Secretary of COSATU, it was between 5 and 6 dependents. Today, that figure is double or triple the number. So when you start to analyze, why are we having a situation like the mining unrest? Because the people that are living on wages today have to support a lot more people than they support in our time. And they feel that their leaders are not representing them. And this causes an issue which is coming back to the issue of governance, of our leaders actually representing the real grievances that people have. And in a context where people lose confidence in leaders, then violence becomes a language, because that's the only language that our leaders seem to listen to.